How's it going, Andrew?
Good. How you doing, Matt?
Hanging in there. Same old, same old. Weather took a turn finally.
Oh yeah, I was out there raking up leaves into a wheelbarrow, and then I made a pile of them and mulched them, and then I'm dumping them on my beds to create some natural gold, as we call it, to improve the soil quality.
You are an overachiever, good sir.
I also then, since my wife was off getting the kid, then I decided to carve 2 pumpkins. So I did 2 pumpkins, and
Gosh.
they're pretty good. I'm a pretty good pumpkin carver. I would say I'm above
There you are.
average.
All right, fair. I'll give you that. I haven't seen your pumpkin carving skills, but I will take your word for it.
So one of the pumps is the beast from over the garden wall. And I drilled some holes and shoved some sticks in its head. And I put a candle in there to see what it looks like. And it looks very like beast. I gave it like a scary teeth going on. So it looks pretty good. The other one just looks like a messed up guy.
Nice. Yeah, we've been putting up Halloween decorations and stuff. I need to put new batteries in one thing I bought years ago that is sound activated, and it shakes the bush, and it's got red eyes that glow and it growls, so that when people walk by, it's going to shake like one of the bushes out front.
That's a good idea. I like that.
That should get some kids pretty good during trick or treat. So
it's nice because the mystery is what makes it scary. That you're like, what's in the bush? Like no one's expecting the bush to move. Yeah,
right, exactly. So that'll be fun. But we should probably keep our chit chat short today and run the intro and get to our guest.
All right, I'll get the music going.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right, well, we have a very special guest today. I'd like to introduce Worshipful Brother Napoleon Sneed Janczek. He's a past master over at West Dallas Lodge and a couple others, I'm fairly certain, and is one of the hosts of the Further Light podcast. Napoleon, how you doing?
Hey, good evening, brethren.
So, Napoleon, we like to always kick our episodes off with a classic icebreaker that Masons love to use. What got you into Freemasonry, and what keeps you in Freemasonry?
Interesting story. So I actually did a podcast on that. But
you gotta shout out the episode number then.
I cannot remember. It was a couple years now. It was one of the earlier podcasts. But some years ago in high school, actually, a friend of mine, his dad was up there. He was gone like all the time, and they were going to all these events, and he was talking about all these festivals that he was going to. And in passing, he said, "Well, my dad's a Mason." At the time, I didn't know what Masonry was. I mean, I had an idea, but I didn't really know. And then come to find out, he was a Prince Hall Mason years later. And I thought, his dad, he always talked highly of his dad and how great his dad was and stuff like that. And that just piqued my interest, so I started studying a little bit and see what this was all about. And I thought, I'd like to be that someday. Well, that was probably almost 30 years later, 20 years later, when I found the time, I got into Masonry, and that's kind of what did it, just the mystery, the intrigue, the history of it all, that's kind of where I went. It wasn't like the typical, I saw, National Treasure or something like that, or read a Dan Brown book or anything like that, but it was more or less just my own personal curiosity.
Awesome. Yeah, we always say on the show that Masonry finds you when it needs to find you. So it's always funny hearing when people's their interest was first sparked compared to when they actually join. And I've noticed if there's a theme, there's always like kind of a lag. Like there's always like some years in between before they finally like pulled the trigger. What keeps you in Freemasonry?
I stay busy. If anybody out there knows who I am, I'm everywhere and anywhere I can be when it comes to Masonry. I love it. I love the brothers. I love the people I encounter. I love the traveling aspect of it, and I just enjoy helping others become better men as well. So that part of it is rewarding. I just enjoy being around other folks, trying to make things happen, different events, stuff like that. Also, I have that background in education here in masonry, so it helps to be able to go out and see people's eyes light up when you bring up a new topic to them. Kind of like what these podcasts do.
Right. How long have you been a Mason now, Napoleon?
I am going on year 11. I got my entered apprentice in, I want to say March or April of 2014. And then I was raised in MM on, what is that, September 17th, 2015. So, yeah, 10 years, going strong.
Right on. I honestly, with some of the conversations we've had, and your knowledge level, would have assumed it had been longer.
I go all in. There's no shortcuts here. I spend a lot of time on it, and I had good mentorship. I think that's one of the biggest. Actually, I came in at the right time. I had the right mentors, coming in, guys out in Jefferson County and District 9 area, and some from the Madison area were always visiting these lodges that I was in, my early days in masonry. And the late, Henry Pinecker was one of them, who was around, and guys such as, like Ralph and the Belkey family, from out that way. There's just a lot of great mentors, and that's, they lead you to the right direction. They lead you into the right stuff to look at. And I try to instill that with guys that I encounter, try to steer them in the right areas and keep them away from some of that more fantastical stuff, because I didn't get that early on. I was able to find that on my own. And I think when I found it on my own, it actually meant something a little better to get it that way than to just jump right into that and kind of throw you off into left field somewhere.
So your mentorship journey, you said you have a bunch of good mentors. How would you describe that journey and what that mentorship looked like? So for anyone listening who might be interested in ways to mentor better, since you had a good mentorship experience.
Yeah. So it's, basically, you got to hold your mentors accountable just like they hold you accountable. So, if they're giving you information, you want to ask a lot of questions. You want to know where the stuff is coming from, what it means. You want to be that person. You want your stuff to be as accurate and as true to your knowledge as possible. You want it to be authentic. And one of the things that worked for me is that my mentors were able to meet me at restaurants, coffee houses, things like that, where we could sit in a quiet corner in these places and go over some of the stuff, particularly when it came to posting in the ritual stuff like that. We would even, go to each other's houses and stuff, in that nature. And I think being comfortable is the biggest thing. When it becomes more of a dry student teacher, kind of mentorship, I think it kind of loses its luster a little bit. I think you have to make it more personal, more conversational, talk about masonry and talk about, interpretations of masonry versus the actual written word that's in front of you. I think that goes a long way. Spend time just enjoying each other's company more so than the lessons.
I would agree. Build the brotherhood and the friendship along with the mentorship aspect of it, and it'll bear way more fruit than if it is more of a simple, I'm the student, or I'm the teacher, you're the student. Let's get through this. You got to pick it up, and when it's open to discussion and you're friends and brothers at the same time, it lends itself better to more openness in discussing the topics as well.
Absolutely. You retain the information like that. It has more meaning and it's more personal. And the irony in it is that you gain lifelong, friendships that way. Brotherhood, friendships, it's lifelong when you start to develop that. I find myself over these years now becoming that person where I'm getting calls at all hours of the night and day, So, but that's okay. That's we love what we do. So,
Exactly.
So, you for our listeners, Napoleon is heavily involved in Masonic education, not only locally within his lodge, but also at the district, and I swear he travels around the state too, promoting Masonic education. What Napoleon, what would you say from your educational experience? What educational tools or resources do you wish every worshipful master knew about in every lodge?
well, first, I think dedicated podcasts that are less opinionated when it comes to education. So, not to shamelessly plug our podcast, but ours is more focused on, Further Light is more focused on education. It's not necessarily a conversational podcast. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's a great importance for that too. I think we need a podcast like this one as well, because this is educational, regardless of how it's presented. Granted, we have our opinions on things, but we try to stay less opinionated in our podcast, and that is where I left off before, is that you want to have, whether it's written works or, magazines, or, some of the general tools that you see throughout the country and the world, the short talk bulletins and things like that, research lodges, who have, various publications. And then, of course, the education officers, reach out to them, because if there's something we can't find, as educators, we will definitely, find out who knows where it is and get those answers out to you guys. And, of course, our working knowledge of having traveled and seeing the different needs and different cultures from around the state and even out of the state, we find different avenues and different podcasts and different conversations and different books to read. And we have a lot of Masonic book clubs out there that where guys get together and they have conversations, and a lot of it's done online now. And then they also talk about, what we would refer to as the more real Masonry versus the more legendary Masonry or mythical Masonry. So I think, as far as masters, wardens, and things like that, they should definitely look at their ritual. It starts with the ritual. Look at it, search out where it comes from, why it's in there, and then what it means to them individually. And again, these are their interpretations. The Masonic journey is all about interpretation, and that journey isn't just metaphorical. Get out there and travel to other places and see what's working and what isn't working, and you utilize that, in your own lodge. And like I always say, take what's good, what you can use, and if you can't use it, just toss it off to the side, and maybe somebody else will pick that part up somewhere along the line.
I think that's really solid advice. I would have to agree with you, going back and touching on short talk bulletins. I feel like those are a underused resource that everybody pretty much has access to.
Absolutely. It's one of those hidden gems, that, if your lodge isn't subscribing to it, you should subscribe to it personally. I think they're not overly extensive reading, but there's some really cool information in some of those things. Gosh, I don't know how long it's been out there, but quite a number of years. More years than most of us have been alive. So.
And they also have
Right.
a podcast too, just reading their extensive archive. I used to subscribe. I should re-up once I moved ahead and resubscribe when I got a new address. But that used to be one of my favorite mail days. When it would arrive in the mail, I go, "Ooh, I got something to read in the bathroom now." And take it on the journey with me and get some Masonic education while I'm in the sanctuary.
And constant reading on Masonic material or things that would relate to lodge activity is healthy. People say it can be an unnerving obsession sometimes, but not really. I mean, think about all the stuff you're reading throughout the day. If you take 5 minutes a day and just look at something, whether it's a ritual book or some other, Masonic publication, it goes a long way. And various other, books, the 21 laws of leadership, for instance, and, books of this nature, the leadership, skills of the Navy SEALs, and all these things are practical within the craft that can help you relate to what you're doing as a Mason in your lodge, and how it correlates with some of our ancient teachings with regard to why the ritual's there in the first place. All about making you think,
I was waiting because I thought Matt had a question that he was on the edge of his seat, and then he just stared at me in the eyes.
I did.
So you briefly mentioned that, when you're trying to acquire this knowledge, it's about balancing the ritual understanding or the interpretations that are usually handed down from your grand jurisdiction, that this is what this means, and then an individual's own philosophical exploration. How would you recommend, or how have you found the proper way to balance those two options? Because, people can go on wild runs with interpretation, but like you said, I think it's also encouraged to experiment with your own interpretations of the symbols. But how do you kind of balance that, do you think?
Well, the one thing to understand is you have time. You have plenty of time. Take a little bit, here and there, whether it's, Psalm 133 or something, or anything that you may see in the ritual, and, look at it. I wonder what this couple of sentences means. You don't have to, go through all of it all at once and in a hurry, and it's okay to have the wrong interpretations or what you feel isn't, relevant to the materials. I think that, part of the process, at least for me, it was, I remember there's probably a good couple years where all I did was just, recite the ritual while opening and closing lodge and not really understanding what the bigger meaning was, what the whole traveling aspect was, and that it wasn't simply just a movement from this place to that place or this lodge to that lodge, that there was something deeper in the understanding of that. And when we call this, the Masonic journey, this is a lifelong journey. It's about self-discovery, but also the discovery of, looking into other people, how they interpret their own self-discovery. So balancing that time is just taking a little bit at a time and not, don't overly do it. I mean, we can look at Albert Mackey, the guy, quit his day job, which was a doctor and a physician, to write strictly about masonry and live out his life through masonry. Now, that was a different time, and there was something to be said about how that worked with certain Masonic lore and how they were paid to do speaking engagements and such. But nobody's asking anybody to do that anymore, to dedicate their whole complete life to the footwork of masonry. But you should take a little time in your day to do some self-reflecting, and then, come with a renewed sense of, what's next. If I take this little piece, I've dissected it here, there, and everywhere else, and then, okay, I'm satisfied with that, and I've heard it from other people and what their interpretations were on some certain section, then I'll move on to the next one, and that can take months, in some cases. In some cases, it can take a matter of minutes to a day, but that's it. You just have to balance it out. Don't try to get too much. It's like the little kid that first learns how to read. They want to read everything. Masonry is very much like that. You want to get into that right away. But I try not to encourage that so much. That goes for jumping into all the other appendant bodies that masonry has. I'm in everything, but at the same time, I try to balance that out. A little bit here, a little bit there, and concentrate on what's more important than just getting all the information all at once, which we would never be able to do anyway. There's too much out there.
The fire hose.
Right. Speaking of appendant bodies, excuse me if I get the title wrong, even though I'm a member of Scottish Rite. I'm not all that active, but you're currently Commander-in-Chief of the Valley of Milwaukee, right?
Correct. Yes. This
perfect.
is actually my third term sitting in one of the bodies in the East, and I'll probably be taking a break after this year with regard to leadership in that aspect. Like sitting in a chair. But yes, Commander-in-Chief this year, and it's been exciting.
Right.
And I'll plug
So
that close, but yeah, they're Scottish Rite exciting here in the Valley of Milwaukee right now. So
Wait, the reason I bring that up is as we're talking about education, and you had brought up dependent bodies. I was just kind of curious what you think the importance of like the Scottish Rite or other appendant bodies is in regards to Masonic education and learning more that you can from the appendant bodies, but also how it can impact you on how you look at the first 3 degrees.
So the appendant bodies are addendums. First, I just want to reiterate that for those who listen to the podcast, that they're not any higher degrees than the 3rd degree of Master Mason. They are just simply extra degrees that are labeled numbers to identify them. They do accent a lot of what you learn in the first 3 degrees in Masonry, and I think that you can get involved in all of it, but it's if you're looking to find more about Masonry, more about its history, more about, what it is that Masons are trying to do to become better, those appendant bodies, if you think the first 3 degrees are food for thought, well, the appendant bodies are the candy and the desserts that come along with it. So you get to experience a different type of brotherhood, if you will, that are thinking higher thoughts than what it would be in just those first 3 degrees. They take those legends and they expand on them and give them more context. The Scottish Rite is divided into 29 degrees, so you have various other aspects, and I got to make a distinction too on that. We're in the northern jurisdiction here, and we have a lot more modern takes on some of these degrees, whereas the southern jurisdiction has the same amount of degrees. They've stayed strictly to their original writings from back in the late 1700s. So there is that distinction. But yes, all of it will enlighten you a little bit more into what Masonry has to offer, its core values, its brotherhood. And I like to call it the fraternity within the fraternity. And you're going to meet different people from different lodges, and it's sort of like traveling in one building. It's like traveling to a variety of different lodges in one place, and you can get different perspectives from people that are in their 70s all the way down to their 20s, and kind of see where people are going in life. And the craziness behind it is it brings all of these people together for a common cause, and that to me is amazing.
I would agree that there is value to be had there. I do like the idea that, and I've started kind of hearing a couple people talking about it lately, the whole like traveling without really traveling thing, because you're bringing guys from different lodges together, and I had never really thought of it that way, but I think that is does add a certain value to appendant bodies.
I agree. Absolutely. I think the more you can get out and meet more Masons, the better off it'll be for you and the Masons you meet.
Napoleon, what would you say? I got a hard question I've been sitting on. In your experience, what is the most misunderstood symbol in Masonry, and how can we help brothers better grasp that symbol?
Oh, the most misunderstood symbol. The Eye of Providence, probably. The general consensus is, it's God's eye watching over us all. Okay, that's great. But actually, that's that symbol. And this is, again, these are interpretations, but it's a lot bigger than that. The light that's emanating from that eye is basically the light that's shining on all of us, and we're that eye. Every one of us has that eye, and Masonry is about building your own temple, your own spiritual temple through the canopy of heaven, in order to shine that light wherever we go or wherever dispersed. And the appendant bodies all adhere to that same concept. And I think that, as a universal symbol, that one in Masonry, and it's the most common one that the world, or that the United States in particular, knows, because it's on every single dollar bill that we have out there. That one is it's not just a simple singular thing. It encompasses all of us in some form and what we bring to the world, and that we're watching as well, for our own sakes and for our own brethren, so that we can self improve and then also come with a renewed sense of brotherhood and fellowship to our communities and to our fellow men, and women, of course, but as a fraternity for sure.
That is a complex symbol. I always like to think of it as like that as a conscious being with your own experiential abilities, like all experiences being encapsulated through shared experience, through that the eye of providence is the God, how do we define providence again? Me and Matt did an episode talking about providence. Providence is like divine wisdom, right? How would you define it, Napoleon? Is that what it is? Divine wisdom is what providence means of sorts?
So yeah, it's like it's care. So we care for our brothers. I mean, in every one of our mission statements, etc., it says that we should be there to care for our brethren. The protective care, to make sure they don't not only do some sort of harm to themselves, spiritually, physically, or anything else for that matter. That's kind of where that providence is. It's in that protective nature that we all have, from the time we're children until adulthood. We have this spirit within ourselves that says, hey, we have to protect certain things. In Masonry, it can go a lot of ways, protect our ritual through our obligations, things like that, which obviously is something that is deep within ourselves. But it's spiritual. It's spiritual. It's the nature of humankind through the eyes of God, right? That we want to be protectors, and that means to we wear the white apron because it's a symbol of innocence and a symbol of a Mason in general. It's the most visible symbol, but that's providence, is that protective nature that we all have, and with the spiritual sense where we send, for instance, the military, the people that serve, they're ready to jump right in, and through providence,
Well,
and there's some preparation that goes along with that too. We had, back in the day, they've had such things as chambers of reflection, etc. Those were to remind you of that, if done properly, of course.
Sure. And what I thought was interesting that I pulled from the symbol too is like, if you act all because you don't get caught acting unhonorably, you still experience yourself being dishonorable as an individual. So I like to imagine like the eye of providence sees like, it's like you still experience that and you're still building, and that builds a bad habit, right? And so that you can't escape providence because there is that natural drive to be good and virtuous. And when you stray from it, even if you do it you go hide in a closet and go and, I don't know, make a spam phone call, you still were aware that you did it, and it still then rubs off on you in a negative way. Is another way that I always like to think about it too.
Yeah, and you should be mindful that the grand architect of the universe is always watching, so that and ultimately that's what we're looking at. And if we are to try and act in that manner, it's like you said, there we are, we're watching what we do, and not all the time, we're not perfect, right? We can't do certain things and it be okay.
All because you're not caught doesn't make it suddenly okay, right? You know what I mean?
Correct.
So what would you say is one of your most memorable Masonic experiences in your last 10 to 11 years, into 10 and some change or whatever, as being a Mason?
Most memorable experience? Well, I've had so many. Right now, it was my trunk or treat that we did for the first time in West Dallas that garnered over 200 kids and adults.
Holy
and
cow.
and some from out of state. it was amazing, you know. So there's always something. There's never just that one, you know. Scottish Rite, I had some amazing experiences there. You know, York Rite, amazing experiences there. I've had different various honors that I've received, you know, over the years, and gosh, experiences at Grand Lodge, you know, and meeting people, Prince Hall, seeing degrees at Prince Hall, you know, Prince Hall Masonry, and just so many different things, man. There's not one that I could pinpoint. I wish I could give you a definite, this was the one that opened my eyes, you know, but it never stops. There's always something that comes next. I mean, Lake Lodge, the Burns thing was a great tradition that once I went, it sold me for the rest of my life, kind of thing. You know, it's you have these different things that come up, and I'm sure I'm missing a great deal of it, but I can tell you from a different perspective though, and this involves the family aspect. So one of the things that when I came into Masonry, I was the typical brand new Mason, didn't know much about it, what I was supposed to say to my family, or, you know, my wife in particular, what I could say, what I couldn't say, all that kind of thing. And she didn't want anything to do with it. You know, she was, you can do what you're going to do. That's fine. I don't want to be involved in all this stuff. Well, she's obviously the one that organized put together the whole trunk or treat and do all these things. She ended up joining, you know, Daughters of the Nile. All this stuff uncoerced. It's just over the years, you know, the granddaughter joins Job's daughters and things like that. Over the years, you just develop relationships. And I think the biggest thing is I've had, you know, when I came into this thing, they told me, oh, you're going to build lifelong relationships. Whatever, you know, I'm just joining another organization kind of thing. And here I am. I have lifelong relationships with people that I would die for, you know, and you never would have thought that coming in, but here we are. They told me that.
They tried to warn you.
They always try to warn us. Can we circle back to trunk or treat for a second? You guys had a heck of a turnout. That was the first time you were doing this. Holy cow. That's awesome.
Yeah. We did not know what to expect. You know, and it was funny because the forecast had rain. We dodged the rain. The skies cleared up. We ended up getting 10 cars and a motorcycle. Shout out to Widow's Sons out there. They showed up, Green Dragon chapter. Gosh, we had the West Dallas Police Department came out and handed out stickers and stuff like that. We had multiple lodges and organizations represented there. Brothers just chipping in, you know, we were selling hot dogs and chips and stuff, gave out, you know, free cotton candy and all that kind of thing. And it was just, the community came in full force. And that whole 2 hours we were occupied. It was just amazing. So we are going to do it again next year. It's probably going to be bigger, you know, so we do have a huge parking lot. We started to put it in the main parking lot, but because of, you know, thankfully we dodged the rain, but then it got windy. So everybody that was decorating their trunks, we had to kind of do it in a more compact area to keep from, you know, let the building on the side of our lodge building kind of block the wind, and that helped. So they were able to do a little circle, and then, you know, just amazing. We got tons of pictures. We're going to try and write a small blurb and see if we can't throw a couple out to the Wisconsin Masonic Journal. But that was a huge success this year, and West Dallas in general is just doing some amazing work. I don't know what to say. It was a great event. Totally blew my mind. I didn't know. I just seen a mob of people, kids, you know, costumes running up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the thing's going to be bigger than we thought. You know,
buy more candy.
We had to make 2 extra runs for candy right nearby because a couple cars had run out, you know, and we had 2 people, you know, counting how many people were walking in just to make sure we had an accurate account. It was over 200 people. So it was pretty cool, you know, and we got some good feedback in the email. It was advertised. We had flyers up in the neighborhood. Also had a Facebook page for that. But yes, if you had never done one of these before, they are a blast. They are a little bit of work to organize, but it's all worth it, man. To see these kids and to see their families just enjoying it and having a good time, and nothing was too scary, nothing was too cheesy. It was all just right.
No, that's amazing. That's a great job to you guys over at West Dallas. That's impressive. You guys have been doing some awesome events this year. Hands down for sure. So
What would you say was your? So our listeners like to hear about the nitty gritty on how we get like a successful event. And that's a successful event. 200 people out of the blue is on a first run is a successful event. What was the inspiration behind the idea, and how did you go about advertising? It sounds like you said you had flyers out and the Facebook page.
Yeah. So, and this is funny because this was within the last 2 months. We had talked about it at the beginning of my year at West Dallas, but we never really put anything forward until kind of the last minute, to be honest with you. It was all my wife's idea. She's help organize these in other communities, and it was like, okay, let's do it. I've been to them. They're real convenient, but I think that it was the organizing, it was the developing a catchy flyer, going out, and God bless her and the kid went out to the various businesses and stores. She made phone calls to all the different appendant bodies, and hey, we're doing this thing. I was putting flyers everywhere I went. Talked about it in the district mailings, and then also through Zoom calls and stuff like that. But then calling the local police department to get their support as well, and just making everything really legit and explaining to everybody, because a lot of people that came, it was their first time setting up their cars and stuff. And so she explained, anybody that needed to contact her and had any questions, she was ready to answer the phone and answer the emails and explain to them, this is how it works. This is how you do it. And we'll be there early. Come on out. But it was a lot of cramming in marketing, and getting it out there. A community event like that, you want to get to all the commercial spots, the Pick and Saves or the Kroger's or whatever, wherever it is, you want to do that and put your flyers up on those free bulletin boards that they got, and then really hammer in on the social media, the Facebook, really get in there and, at everyone and highlight and all that stuff, to get it visible, make it public.
I've always been curious about the bulletin boards. We've often talked about that, and I feel like I never know where to find the bulletin boards except for when I find myself face to face with one, like a Quick Trip or something. But yeah, you do see a lot of people posting community stuff on those for sure.
Yeah, you use the full size page, take up the whole bulletin board. No, go out there and do it. While you want yours seen, right? So that's that was the thing. We're not strangers to that. So.
It's an interesting point. We need to start running flyers out there. I've thought about that on other, like our open house event, being like, we really need to put it out there, because you forget that a lot of people in the community do check those boards. It's like in a video game, the quest board.
You check it. Yep. And then you got to have somebody dedicated to answer those emails and calls. That's huge. If people know that somebody's on the other end willing to listen to them, they're more apt to come out and support it.
that's a good point. So keep that in mind, Andrew, when you're going around flyering next year.
Back in the day, we used to call that bombing. Bomb squad, everything is going out there putting up posters.
So, Napoleon, I'm going to switch topics quick here.
Sure.
I had a question that I've been trying to mull over as a younger Mason for a couple of years now. And I think you're just the man to help me answer it for myself. What do you think the future of education needs to look like in Masonry so that we can keep ourselves engaged with a new audience of Masons who are coming into the fraternity? Like, what does education need to become to cater to the new audiences coming in?
So, it's difficult in any situation, but you have to observe the room. You have to listen. You have to hear what's going on with those Masons in your space. That's first. Before there's any education, you have to know what the discussions are about. Are they talking about esoterics? Are they talking about, going fishing? Are they talking about selling lawnmowers, as my brother Chris Lidke likes to talk about? You just have to listen first. The younger generations, or the newer Masons in particular, they want to know where we came from, why we do what we do, and how long I'm going to be here. And if you can figure out how to relate, and people always laugh when I say this, is how do you make all this ancient knowledge and all this old stuff relevant to today? It's not an easy task. As you guys have played with Regis before, it's similar to taking that stuff, giving it your own interpretation, and then making it relevant to today. You talked about it. You just did it a little while ago with the gaming board. That's how you tap into those guys. Get them active in it. Don't just talk at them, talk with them, and include them into the education. Education itself isn't so much the presentation, it's the discussion. And by the way, there's a podcast coming out about that, so stay tuned. But yes, absolutely. Get involved, engaged, find out what they enjoy, and then incorporate a little bit of masonry into it. Is there, whether video games, for instance, I'm an old school gamer. I used to love the first person shooters and all that stuff. And I wasn't into the role playing games as much, but I got into a lot of that and clans and what I would do is I would talk about that and use that metaphorically to speak about, masonry. Oh, we're a group of guys that are doing this, or we're a group of Masons that, started a gaming club. We have, board gaming clubs out there, or Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, with various ages, from our youth groups all the way up to Masons that are in their 60s. So whatever is being heard in those spaces, take that, find out what's relevant to that, and then make a presentation about it. I can remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, Brother Matt here had did something on the Jedi Order, at a district meeting. That's the kind of stuff you do, right? Like you take that stuff that's popular or something that people are going to be interested in, and that one snapped me right away. I'm like, oh, I can see where this is going, because I love Star Wars too. So it's just like, okay, here we go. That's the kind of stuff that you do to engage your lodge. Now, I just want to say this part of it too. It doesn't always have to be some deep esoteric or some deep Masonic, these are the working tools, this is what they are, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't always have to be that. Talk about the things that interest you. Anything that can improve you as a man and as a Mason is going to be good education for you.
Education can take on various forms for sure. And I mean, it could be as something as, I don't want to call it mundane, but something like how to properly file your taxes, right? That could be a valuable education piece in a lodge. There's no limit on it, or no saying that it necessarily has to be Masonic in nature. We're all here to get better as men. So anything that, a presentation on leadership, anything that makes us better as men and better in the community is valuable education.
Yeah, especially if you know somebody out there that does public speaking or presentations on various topics, whether it's leadership or anything really. Find those people. A lot of times they'll do it for free. I mean, they're out there to serve as well, usually, or at a minimal cost. But look into that sometimes, or reach out to lodges that have done something like that in the past.
I've been having conversations with my counselor, or our counselor, and a lot of our stuff this year has been non-Masonic, but interesting stuff like making mead and various other fun topics, which were great. And I basically told him, he said, next year, if you're elected, like, what kind of stuff do you want for education? I said, you can keep doing your stuff. I just asked that 1/3 be Masonic, because we are in a tiled space where we can actually talk about things. I said, so, 4 times a year, make sure it's Masonic, and the rest of the time, just make sure it's something that people actually are interested in hearing about. You know what I mean? Exactly what you're talking about. Like, a lot of things are Masonic adjacent too, that are helpful from a Masonic perspective, even if you're not, dressing it in symbols, right? And saying,
Right.
look, I'm covered in all these hieroglyphs. Now it's interesting. And you're like, I guess. Maybe more confusing, actually. So like you can really extrapolate a lot out. The other thing I've been experimenting with is trying to make my educations more performative. I really tried that for the first time with that my Plato one, but I have some others that I've been workshopping a little bit that I want to be like a little bit more like. I feel like in the modern age with younger people, everything is so flashy. It's like it's all very much just shoved in your face, and you're like, so. I feel like sometimes if you put on a bit of a show, it can kind of engage that serotonin or whatever that they need to pay attention.
Absolutely. And by the way, that Plato presentation was great. I loved it. You do more stuff like that. It was just the right amount of time. It had some effects to it, which I think is huge. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, this is not a new concept with performative allegory, if you will. This is how we learn as Masons from the very inception of it. And it's for that reason. It's to retain that information. So I like to do the lecture format, but every once in a while I'll throw a PowerPoint or I'll do something that, that's, flamboyant to keep somebody's attention. I think you're right on track with that. I would only add this to your when you're planning for education in the year, it doesn't always have to be the counselor. He should lead it. He should run it as almost like a committee, but he should include other people to encourage them to go out and find something to do as well, or work with them.
He does. He doesn't do all the educations. We rotate through pretty well.
He's scheduled. He basically, when he was asking, he's like, "What's the work contain?" I said, "If you can schedule no one, it's going to fall on you. So keep it booked out and make sure you have some backups." I said, when I was doing mentorship, but I wasn't really an officer yet. I was kind of like unofficially doing a lot of education and stuff. I'd just be like, if there's no education, I have 3 just in like the back seat going, this can get pulled anytime. And then, so he's done a good job at scheduling. And then he was like, I have one I want to do too. So I agree that you don't want to put it all on him because you really want to involve everybody in what they're passionate in.
And try to save time for discussion. Like I said earlier. Yes. I mean, you're not lying. Being an education officer, I was visiting a lodge here last week or the week before, and they didn't have anything for education. And our education officer's in there. I always have my bag with me. There's always a bag of tricks, right? So have something always available, something ready to go. I'm speaking more towards the guys that are in lodges that do education or like to do education. Always have something, even if it's a short, 2-minute paragraph or two on something that can bring some knowledge. I've seen it all. I've seen poetry. I've seen, just photos and discussing paintings, old ancient, or older paintings that were Masonic related, things of that nature. But always have something in the hopper, so to speak.
I've been having fun too, trying to put the discussion questions within the education so they can't get cut at the end because you still have more talking to do. So you force them because you're like, I'm not done yet. I just shoved it in the middle and in a couple spots so they can't escape. Just like, you've always been a proposer of putting education at the front of the meetings. Same reason applies. You're like, can't skip it if it's in the front. Not as easily. Yep. You can't skip discussion if it's within the middle of the education because it's already a trap. Got to trap them.
That's a great way to do it. I incorporate that every so often myself. People off guard. It's fun.
Andrew's very skilled at trapping people into listening to him talk.
I know. I'm doing education in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. At the next day, I'm doing education, and I shoved some discussion questions in there. I'm going to shove down your guys' throats, so.
Ooh, fun. Well, I think we should ask Napoleon the question we ask everyone, and who's a past master, and then let him plug something. So do you want to ask it since you're the one that, if elected, will be taking the East?
Napoleon, what would be your advice for a incoming worshipful master who's about to ascend the dais to the east?
talk to some of the closest past masters that you have in your orbit, within that lodge. Ask them what their successes were, what their headaches were, and what they did to overcome some of that stuff. Doesn't mean it's going to happen to you, but oftentimes when you're succeeding something that's already been established, people will still have the same mindset for a month or two of what took place the year before. So you want to try to come in strong in changing that. Hey, this is something different. I got something more exciting. You want to do that as early as possible. And the only way to do that is by having the ammunition of those guys that preceded you. They're going to tell you who did what, how they reacted, how they helped or didn't help, or whatever it may be. They're going to be able to tell you which guys were the ones that were doing things. And it's your job to lead them in such a way to motivate them to either continue doing great work or to do something else that may include them more. I find oftentimes that first couple months is a little shaky with a lot of new guys, because they're not sure they didn't get enough information to know how to deal with the guys they're leading. And as it is, as masters, we're overseers of the work. So we need to be able to see what's going on, know exactly who's where, what their skill sets are, and use them to the best of their abilities. Never leave a guy stagnant. That would be the first thing I ever say, is give them something to do. If you see guys just sitting on the sidelines, I don't care if they were past masters 20 years ago, even if it's something small, give them something to do. Interview committees, whatever it may be, but something. Give everybody a chance at something. And if they say no, that's fine. But always try to incorporate everybody into something that's going on.
Awesome. I think it's great advice. Yeah.
Solid advice. Well, before we wrap this up, Napoleon, so it's going to air tomorrow. So is there any upcoming events or anything you would like to plug for our southeastern Wisconsin listeners?
Well, if you're a Scottish Rite Mason, come out to Waukesha Lodge 37 tomorrow night. We are doing a 4th degree onboarding for 6 new Scottish Rite members, and we're also offering a video 28th degree with some good discussion. And there's also, I heard, a taco bar that's going to be there tomorrow night. So check that out. Saturday, this coming Saturday, October 25th at Lake Masonic Center, we have our Masonic Con. Now, we extended registration till noon on Friday, so you can pretty much register up until the last minute. I gotta say this, it's for Master Masons only at this point. Second to that, if you are going to be there, it is $20. You must register because we are trying to keep a accurate count. I'm not sure how much flexibility there's going to be there. It's $20. You pay at the door. It includes your food and the events of the day. Myself, Brother Pat Choka, Brother Chris Ludke, and Brother Jeff Woosley will be doing a live symposium about the ruffians. And then, of course, we have 2 guest speakers in the afternoon. One, Matthew K. from Burlington Lodge, will be talking about astrology and some esoteric stuff with regard to Masonry. And also Matt Gallagher, author of Practical Freemasonry. You're gonna want to see that, and this is gonna be his debut speaking, on his book and some various Masonic topics. So it should be a good day of fun and education, and there's also going to be a variety of vendors there too as well. So definitely want to check that out. There's some degree stuff coming up. We have a Master Mason degree at West Dallas on November 10th. Which is a Monday evening, and I hear one of my good friends on this podcast is going to be a major part of that. So you're going to want to come check that out too. Other than that, I don't have much more. We're getting towards the end of the year. There is on the 3rd week of November, the 3rd Friday, we're going to do a Thanksgiving potluck and memorial service for one of our brothers that had departed.
Awesome. Well, and also to our listeners, make sure if you haven't subscribed or checked it out, please check out the Further Light podcast. It's a great podcast. I listen to it generally, well, at this point I'm behind, so I've been listening to like it twice a week. But it's a great podcast. It's very educational. They cover a lot of great topics. So please check out the Further Light podcast. And yeah, I need to sign up for MasonicCon probably right now because I'm also letting you guys in the building. So I might as well just stay.
All right, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there, but you can come too. So, but I'm planning on getting there early, Andrew. So don't worry about opening the building.
I'm sorry, I'm the temple use coordinator, but it's whatever. Fine.
And if you allow me, brothers, thank you guys for all that you're doing. This is a great podcast. You guys are doing great work. Don't let it die out on you. Keep it going. Keep it fresh. Keep us all on our toes, man. Love you, brothers, and thanks again for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Napoleon. We really appreciate it.
Cool. And with the last minute of our time on this meeting, to our listeners, please make sure to check us out on social media. And you can always email us at timeforfellowship@gmail.com.
Timeforfellowship@gmail.com. You all have a great day.
Bye.